Happy Monday, everybody. I hope everybody had a great weekend, a happy Easter, and a good break from the work week. Welcome into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today we have a big show. The men's Final Four and women's Final Four has been set in March Madness. We're going to break all that down. The biggest surprises, what I expect to see in these two semifinal matchups, as well as the champion, as we have found our final four teams in NCAA March Madness. We're also going to get into the question of Joel Embiid. A report came out this weekend saying he's targeting a return. He hasn't played since the end of January. He's targeting a return. We'll talk about whether that's a good idea for him, for the franchise, and all the ripple effects that can come with this move. And like I've been promising for the last couple days, Mock Draft 2.0 is ready to go. 2.0, we did our first mock draft right before free agency started. And now that free agency is done, we get a better landscape. We have mock draft 2.0 out. We'll break all of that down in segment 3. And our final segment of the day, we're going to go over some tight playoff races in the NBA and the NHL as well, as both of those two seasons kind of wrap up. They both have less than 10 games left for all of their teams, so we will break down the wild finishes in those two leagues. But like I was saying, we're going to start our show off talking about the Final Four. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. It will pop up at the bottom of the screen. We'll have a little discussion about what you had to say. Anything that you do give, we really do appreciate. Once again, that link to leave a tip or donation is gsmcpodcast.net. But like I was saying before, Final Four. The Final Four has been set, and there are a couple surprise teams. Obviously, it's a little chalky. This entire March Madness tournament kind of has been. You have two 1 seeds that have advanced to the Final Four, that being the ever-dominant UCONN. UCONN, who en route to the Final Four hadn't won a game by less than 15 points in the last 2 seasons. They have been so dominant in the postseason. They went on a 30-0 run. You heard me right, 30-0. To advance through the Elite Eight. 30 points to 0 on the other team. They were tied before that. They end up winning that game by about 25. That is a dominant performance against a really, really good defense in Iowa State. A really, really good offense in Illinois. I apologize. Illinois had the best offense in the entire nation by KenPom's rankings, and they got shut down by that UConn defense. That is a scary, scary thought, especially when they go up against a team like Alabama, who their next matchup is, who much like Illinois has a very good offense. They have an elite offense. You take a look at the points that they've been putting up and their performances to get to this point in the Elite Eight. Their games are always hectic, fast-paced, and they score. They score a lot of points. But we just saw UConn go up against a team that had the best offense by advanced metrics. And they dominated. Again, that 30-0 run is insane. So UConn is going to be a juggernaut. And they do have to play a nice little kind of Cinderella story in Alabama. This is the first time Alabama has ever made the Final Four in school history. A great season last year. They were a top seed in the tournament. Ended up not making it past in a loaded division, or conference. No, not conference. Region. Sorry about that. A loaded region last year, but now they don't have that big name player. They don't have that top draft pick. They've found a way to run it back, and they're here in the Final Four. What's really carried them here is their offense. We just did a little preview about that, but when you go back and you watch their games, against the College of Charleston in the first round, that was very much a get out of my way, whoever scores the most points wins style game. It's the same thing for the rest of their games. They run and gun, shoot fast paced, outscore your opponent. That's how we're gonna win the game, and it's worked. They've been able to outscore their opponent every single time, but now they're running into a buzzsaw in UConn. UConn, the defending national champions. UConn is a very scary team. Very scary. They haven't lost by more than they haven't given up more than 58 points in this entire tournament. Their defense has been locked in. They haven't scored less than 75. They've won by the closest margin of victory that they had was the second round against Northwestern. That was a 17-point game. There hasn't been a single closer game than that. They've won by 30 once. They've won by 30 twice at this point in the tournament, and 25 the second time. They have been absolutely dominant on the offensive and defensive end. Again, shutting down some of the best offenses in the nation. Illinois only put up 52. San Diego State only put up 52. Northwestern 58. Stetson only put up 52. They have been playing lights-out basketball. They are a very, very scary team to watch right now. And they've kind of just shown exactly what everyone thought they were heading into the tournament. That they're the best team in the nation, and everyone else is just playing for second. Now, anything could change. Like I've said before on this show, when I say something with certainty about March Madness, it's usually wrong. So I'm going to continue to be I'm going to be confident about this, because UConn looks like there's not a team in the entire nation that can even touch them. We talked a little bit about Alabama's run. They put up 109 points in the first round against the College of Charleston. That's the most points in the tourney. And then in a wild game, round 2 against Grand Canyon, they put up 72, win by 11 there. A tight, close game against the 1 seed North Carolina Tar Heels. Again, these games haven't been traditional basketball. They've been insane, wild, crazy endings to all these games that have been close. And then they come over and beat a really solid Clemson team that took out a lot of really, really good opponents. But UConn, UConn kind of, Illinois and Alabama are very similar basketball teams in the way that, again, they're offense first. Illinois, I think, has a little bit of a better defense than Alabama even. I don't see a world where Alabama takes UConn out unless they just don't miss. That was a big thing in that Illinois game. When you shoot 25% from the field, you're not going to win a game. 28% from 3, 26% from 3, 25% from the field. You're not going to beat the best team in the country like that. So if Alabama can hit 50% of their shots, 50% of their threes, I think they have a shot. But that's a tough ask. You don't want to go into a game saying, all right, guys, in order to win, we have to hit 50% of our shots. And we still might not do it. That is a bit of a mismatch there. The other side of the bracket, though, the other Final Four matchup, that's the one that I'm a lot more interested in. You have Cinderella run of the tournament, a legendary run, and it's not getting as much hype because they're already in a power conference. NC State, the 11 seed, taking on Purdue, the 1 seed. And the reason I'm so excited about this matchup is because you have DJ Burns there at the bottom, in the low block, taking on Zach Edey. Zach Edey is a 7-foot tall man who's put up 40 points in back-to-back games, 40-point double-doubles in back-to-back games en route to... He's really kind of looked unstoppable. Against Tennessee, they had no one that could even guard him. Then Tennessee stayed in that game. But he put up 40 points, 40 of the 72 points. Against Utah State in the second round, he put up 40 points. It is scary to think to look at his stats and just see how dominant he has been. 27 points against Gonzaga, and against Grambling State in that first round, he puts up 30. He's scored 27 or more points in every single game so far this tournament. He has been dominant, and that's because when you're 7 feet tall in college basketball, no one's going to be able to stop you. He's the favorite to win National Player of the Year. I believe if he does, it'd be 2 years in a row for him. That puts him in an elite company. he's one of he is a monster down low. But if you have been watching, the tournament at all, if you've been watching it at all, you've seen the star there is DJ Burns. DJ Burns, the 300-pound man who has the footwork, the handles, and the passing of a guard. It's so much fun to watch him work down low in the block. He dominated Duke down low. He put up 29 points against Marquette when they were doubling him. He was able to kick it out, find the wide open guy, really get this offense moving. He has been the engine that really helps them go. He's not scoring all the points all the time, but he has been another dominant post player. No one has been able to really stop him. And that's why NC State has won 9 straight games. They came into the ACC tournament as a 10 seed just 20 days ago. They come in as a 10 seed, not expecting to make the tournament. They win 5 games in 5 days, including knocking off Duke, North Carolina, Virginia, 3 tournament teams. And then they make the tournament and they continue their hot streak. It has been a lot of fun to watch NC State play basketball, and I think this is the best matchup for Zach Edey. We talk about the physicality of DJ Burns, how big and strong he is down low, and if you're not going to have a 7-foot guy that can go up against Zach Edey, you want a guy that can bully him, a guy that won't let him get close. And DJ Burns is that kind of player. He's not 7 feet tall. He's not small, but he's not 7 feet tall. He's going to have to deal with that. That's going to be the deciding factor in this game. Which team's big man is able to win their battle, and that's a game I'm very excited to watch. UConn Alabama is going to be more fireworks, I think. While NC State Purdue is going to be closer to hard-nosed, gritty, physical basketball type situation. But I'm very, very excited to see the rest of the March Madness tournament. It's been an interesting year for March Madness, but we're kind of finding the best teams rise to the top right now. I expect Purdue to play UConn in the finals, and I think those two were the best teams heading into the Sweet 16. If you had asked me to remake my bracket then, those are the 2 teams I would have put in the finals. Obviously, my bracket got real busted, but those were the 2 best teams heading into the Sweet 16, and it's kind of stayed that way. But anyway, Final Four is set. That's coming around this weekend. The 6th is the semifinals, and the 8th is the finals, the championship game. In our next segment coming up, we're going to transition out of NCAA, make a move into a question about Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid might be coming back to the lineup. We'll weigh the pros and cons of that and all the ripple effects that might come as a result of him maybe being back in the lineup for Philly. So stick around. We'll be right back on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient. Hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing. Sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown. Get in my way and to be put down. It ain't replaced all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the news it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind.
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much for sticking with me through that break. If you are just tuning in, we just finished breaking down the Final Four in March Madness. Lots of great matchups, lots of great stories coming through. A couple of pretty interesting matchups in that Final Four. I think they did a pretty good job of weeding out the best teams in the nation so far in this tournament. There hasn't been too many crazy stuff other than NC State going on its magical run. But in this segment, we're going to transition into the NBA a little bit. Joel Embiid, the star center for the 76ers, reigning MVP winner, he tore his meniscus back at the end of January. And report came out this weekend saying that he is targeting a return. And it kind of split the internet from what I've been seeing about what they should do. Because on one hand, you have the fact that Joel Embiid has constantly had injuries. And you want him to be completely healthy for the playoffs for them to make a run. So maybe you don't play him until the playoffs. And then there's the other side that's saying if he wants to play, let him play. He's already come out and said this season that he is worried about the future there in Philadelphia, and if he doesn't get stuff going in the right direction, then maybe he will not re-sign when his contract is up. But we'll explore both sides of that argument in just a second. But before we do, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net, leave a tip or donation with a message in it. It'll pop up on the bottom of the screen. We'll have a little discussion about what you had to say. Everybody watching will be able to see it. Once again, that link to leave a tip or donation is gsmcpodcast.net. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. I'm gonna break down both sides of this argument, but I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on what the Sixers should do with Joel Embiid. And I'm gonna start with the camp that I'm in, which is I think he should play if he wants to. It came out at the beginning of the season. I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but he said something along the lines of, if the Sixers don't start showing me something that they're serious contenders, that they're trying to win, I'm going to leave because I would like to win a championship. He said that in less words, basically. And when you have a guy like Joel Embiid, especially in the NBA, when players can control their destinies a lot more than really in any other sport, they can demand a trade and that trade happens. It doesn't always happen like that, especially with star players. It doesn't happen nearly as much as it does in the NBA in most other sports, at least the major American sports. You can talk about transferring in soccer all the time, but the real issue comes. It's not about this season, because the Sixers, if we're being honest with each other, the Sixers aren't going to win it this season. I could always be wrong, but the Bucks and the Celtics are just leagues above them. It doesn't really seem like the type of year where they're going to be competing. And they had I think, a solid trade deadline. They went out and they got Buddy Hield, helped space the floor for the potential return of your dominant, gravity-inducing center at Joel Embiid. So I think there's a world where this works out really good. And all their moves kind of pointed towards, hey, we're going to win now. We need to show him that we can win now, at least make some kind of advancement. And then there's the other side that's saying, wait one more year. Paul George is going to be a free agent. There's rumors that Philly is going to push all their chips and grab Paul George to be that second guy. Buddy Hield is an expiring contract. I don't know why they'd trade for him if they didn't plan on playing Joel Embiid in the playoffs. That's just one of those moves that to me signals that he's going to play when he wants to play. This is all about Joel Embiid's decision, his timeline, because at the end of the day, Philly is nothing without him. Right? You see how they are without him. You have solid players. You've got Tyrese Maxey. He's playing really good basketball, leading that team to be mediocre. They're not a playoff team with him as their number one, but he's not a player you want to scoff. If he's your number two, you're happy. Tyrese Maxey is having a wonderful season, uh, averaging like 25 points a game, showing he can be a number one guy, but it's not enough for the Sixers to be true contenders. That's when you need a guy, a truly elite guy like Joel Embiid back in that lineup. Like I said, I've really enjoyed what they did at that trade deadline. They haven't really been able to test it out with Joel Embiid, but the spacing should be there. The Sixers' biggest weakness when they had Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, and when Ben Simmons was good, was they didn't have the shooting to space the floor. They were very crowded and they didn't have that outside shooting. They went out and they got guys like J.J. Redick. They went out, they brought Jimmy Butler in for a year and then got their hearts broken on that Kawhi Leonard shot. The Sixers are in a really tough position because they have no negotiating power left with Joel Embiid. And if they had any of that negotiating power, I think there might be a conversation here. But right now, Philly is just kind of praying that Joel Embiid decides to re-sign with them, because if he decides to walk, this entire era has been for nothing. The process failed. He is the process, and it's not looking too good. There's already been murmurs of him wanting out, and they need to prove something, prove that they can win, prove that they're trying to win, and I think they've really tried to do that. Everything they're doing is to convince Embiid to come back because, like I said, that trade deadline does not make a lot of sense if you're planning on Embiid not playing. Otherwise, you just traded like a bunch of picks and some mid-level bench guys for an expiring contract that's not going to get you anywhere. It's a net negative trade there. You lose assets for a guy that's gone. But if they had this mindset that Joel Embiid will be back, he will be healthy, and we will go on a run, then it makes a little bit of sense. Like I said, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on this. Do you think Joel Embiid should return as soon as possible? Do you think he should wait off until the end of the regular season? That's kind of the camp I'm in. Not the rest him for the rest of the year, which I've heard some people say. But, the regular season only has, 5 games left, 10 games left? They were running down the clock there, and the Sixers aren't really in danger of missing the play-ins at a minimum. They might have to do one of those play-in games, but if you're the Sixers and you played half the season without your elite star player, sometimes that's just how it goes. You saw the Heat last season. It's not like it's impossible for the Sixers to get out of the play-in. They're only 2 games back of the Pacers at that 6th seed. They've played 75 games. They've got 7 games remaining to play. Joel Embiid is targeting a return soon. Is it really worth it when you basically are locked in? You are locked in to at least a play-in spot. You're basically locked into that top play-in now. Anything could happen. The Bulls could go on a bit of a run, and the Sixers, who are 4 games up on them, could lose all these games. But at this point, with where you are in the position, you're not really fighting for too much. That 6th seed, sure, it's nice, but do you really is that really what they want? Do they want to risk some Joel Embiid health for one less game of basketball in the playoffs? At this point, with only 7 games left in the season, if I'm the Sixers, I'm waiting this out until the playoffs. And it isn't anything against Joel Embiid. If Joel Embiid comes up to me as the coach / GM, and says I want to play tonight, he's going in that lineup tonight. This is completely up to him. But if he doesn't say anything to me, and I'm going off of his medical history and all that stuff, I'm playing him game 1 of the play-ins or the playoffs if they manage to get their way in there. I'm not playing him right away. I'm going to be a little extra cautious, not so cautious that I'm holding him out for the rest of the season or for the playoffs. But if he feels like he's almost ready to go and the playoffs are this close, I just don't see a lot of reason in bringing him in, especially with where they are in the standings. They could catch the Pacers. They could. This is something that's definitely very possible for them to do. Miami's a game and a half on them. They play the Heat one more time before the end of the season. Uh, they've got a tough schedule, though. They play the Thunder tomorrow. They get the Heat right after that. Uh, After that, it's not super tough, but the Magic are a couple games up on them. They get them later on in the season. Um, Coming down the wire, I just don't see a lot of reason. I just really don't see a lot of reason why Joel Embiid should be rushed back to this lineup, this Sixers lineup that they're a play-in team this season. So maybe this is something that you guys disagree with. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on Joel Embiid and what his outlook looks like, his time frame, what you guys would do if you were in charge of that situation with the report that he is planning on coming back soon. But yeah, coming up in our next segment, we are going to shift gears out of basketball, talk a little bit about the NFL. I have done my second mock draft, Jeremy Lapidus' mock draft 2.0, coming up right around the corner now that the majority of free agency has taken shape. Now that most of the big moves are done, the frenzy is all taken care of, we can, with just a couple weeks until the draft, do a post-free agency mock draft. So that is coming up next. Make sure you stick around on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. We will be right back.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much for sticking with me through that break. If you are just tuning in, we talked about March Madness, the Final Four being set in our first segment. We talked about the matchups upcoming this weekend, what I expect to happen, as well as a recap of all of their runs to get to where they are right now. In our second segment, we talked a little bit about Joel Embiid, his situation with the Sixers, everything that kind of revolves around it, when he should come back and when he might come back, with the report saying that he is on his way back soon with only 7 games to go in the regular season. Coming up here in this segment, we are going to do our second mock draft, Jeremy Lapidus' mock draft 2.0. That is coming up in just a second, but before we get into that, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net, leave a tip or donation with a message. It'll pop up on the bottom of the screen. We'll have a little discussion about what you had to say for you, me, everybody watching around the world to see. We appreciate anything and everything and anything that you guys do give. Once again, that link to leave a tip or donation is gsmcpodcast.net. But like I was saying, we're going to get into the mock draft 2.0. The first mock draft we did was right around Combine time, NFL Combine time. This was before free agency started. We're going to go over a couple of the main differences that I had between mock draft 1.0 and mock draft 2.0. If you have a team that you'd like me to go through in depth about why I chose them to pick that player, let me know in the comments. I'll be keeping an eye on that. But like I was saying, we're just going to start at the top, we'll go through their top 10 in Mock Draft 2.0, any other standouts, and then if you guys have any team that you'd like me to break down, I will do that for you. So Mock Draft 2.0 starts off very similar to the way that we had Mock Draft 1.0 go. Caleb Williams going number 1 overall to the Bears. That is a lock now that Justin Fields is gone. They have really built up the wide receiver core there in Chicago. Adding Caleb Williams there is going to be huge for that offense. He is the guy that can change a franchise. The Bears haven't had a real quarterback ever. Their best quarterback ever is probably Jay Cutler. And that's no shade on Jay Cutler, but he's not the one that you want as your best quarterback in franchise history, especially a franchise that is as old and as historically good as the Bears have been, for as long as they've been as well. 2.0, second pick, again, the Commanders are going to do something crazy. There's rumors of them going out and drafting J.J. McCarthy. I think that's just smoke to get a team like the Broncos to try and trade up. Or maybe the Vikings, although it wouldn't make a lot of sense for them to trade out of 2. Trying to just throw a little smoke screen out there, see if they can get anything that's really worth it. I do have them taking Jaden Daniels. I have them taking Jaden Daniels at 2. He is closer in play style to Kyler Murray, which we all know Cliff Kingsbury got rid of a quarterback so we could use that kind of play style. Interesting choice. I don't mind the decision taking it over Drake May. That's the player that I have them taking there. Just it would fit the scheme, and all the reports I've been hearing is they want to run that Cliff Kingsbury offense. Maybe get something exciting in Washington. Pick 3, also going to stay in the quarterback position. The New England Patriots, I have taking Drake May. There's some rumblings that they might trade out of this pick. Bunch of teams that are looking at drafting a quarterback or targeting that number 3 pick as a place that they might trade. The Patriots might say, I want to keep Jacoby Brissett and grab a wide receiver. I don't think any of that's going to happen. I have them taking Drake May. He's a guy that might go number 1 overall in a lot of other NFL drafts. You take it to last year's draft, he probably would have gone number 1 overall. He's a really good quarterback. He really is. I kind of fell into the bias in the beginning of he's a quarterback from North Carolina, and it gave me Mitch Trubisky vibes, very scared of it. But then I went and go watch this tape, and he's a lot different. He's very, very good. He has the arm to make any throw. He's going to be a very good quarterback in the NFL, Drake May is. And then at 4, if Marvin Harrison gets past the Cardinals, they're doing something wrong. The Cardinals need a wide receiver. They need a wide receiver. They don't really have a star receiver. They traded Marquise Brown, who was their wide receiver 1 last year, and now they've got basically no one. Marvin Harrison Jr. is probably the best player in this draft, or the most likely player to succeed, I will say. Caleb Williams is probably better, but there's a chance that he isn't everything he lives up to be. Marvin Harrison Jr., I think, is going to be the guy that I feel most certain in being successful. And pairing him with Kyler Murray, you saw how good Kyler was when he had that elite receiver, when he had DeAndre Hopkins, when he had these weapons. But all these weapons are gone now. And the Cardinals are going to try and make a push, but Marvin Harrison Jr. is not getting past them. I have heard stuff saying they might trade. We're not doing any trades in our mock draft. The first major change between mock draft 1 and 2 comes at spot 5, though. And this happens because, the Chargers had 2 wide receivers when I made mock draft number 1. They had Keenan Allen, they had Mike Williams. Now they have no wide receivers. Josh Palmer is a respectable receiver, but he's not wide receiver 1 material. He's not that guy that you say, okay, go get it, Josh Palmer, you're our guy. Malik Neighbors is that quick twitch, get the ball out fast kind of guy. He is electric with the ball in his hands. I'm very excited to see, because I think at this pick, it's a toss-up between him, Malik Neighbors, and Rome Odunze. Those two, I believe, are going to go 5-6. The Giants taking whichever one the Chargers are not going to take. But the fact of the matter is, it really just comes to personal preference for John Harbaugh. Does he want that fast twitch explosive guy, or does he want the contested ball guy? My personal preference is Rome Odunze, although I do think the Chargers are going to take Malik Neighbors there at the 5th overall pick, with the Giants then taking Rome Odunze at 6. We hit our first offensive lineman at 7, Joe Alt, in what really is a loaded offensive lineman class. If you remember back to that first mock draft I did, I believe I had like 10 offensive linemen. There are a lot of offensive tackles, centers that are going to go in this draft really early. Joe Alt is probably the most complete out of all of them. They're all really good. Like I said, this is an incredible draft for the offensive line. There's some elite inside offensive linemen, some elite tackles out there, some guys that are going to make really good guards. It's very, very exciting to see all the talent at this position. Joe Alt, I have going 7, the first guy off the board in a stacked class at that position. Rounding out the top 10, as we get down to the bottom, Dallas Turner, I have going to the Falcons at 8. They need an edge rusher. They have no pass rush. Their leading pass rusher was a 37-year-old Calais Campbell last season. They already have an elite corner out there in A.J. Terrell. They fixed the offense, theoretically, by going out and getting Kirk Cousins. You have all the weapons there already. Now they just need a pass rush. You win in the trenches. The offensive line is already really solid. You go out and you get Dallas Turner there at 8. I think that's a huge pick. Because they need someone on the offensive line, on the defensive line, to get pressure there. Dallas Turner is the highest rated in the class. I think he's the safest pick, injury history and success-wise. If you wanted to go for a little more high upside, Liatu Latu is a guy that you might want. He just has a lot of history in the injury department. He was declared unfit to play football before transferring and then being allowed to play again. And now he's going to go in the first round most likely. So just something to think about there, some risk-reward type stuff. Pick 9, the Bears go again. We talked about them getting Caleb Williams already. They brought in Keenan Allen, but I think they're going to go get another weapon. Brock Bowers is listed at tight end, and I know the Bears have Cole Kmet, who is a really solid tight end. But what Brock Bowers can do, stretching the field, maybe you come out in 2 tight end sets. You have DJ Moore and Keenan Allen along with Brock Bowers and Cole Kmet. Or you just move Brock Bowers to like a wide receiver position. He can run all the routes. He's explosive. I think him in that Bears offense with Caleb Williams now there, it's going to be really, really fun to watch. Brock Bowers is going to be electric in the NFL. He's so tough to guard that it's going to be really, really, it's going to be tough to find his fit. But the Bears, they just need weapons right now. And if I had to classify Brock Bowers at any position, it would be a weapon. So they do have Cole Kmet, and I understand the 2 tight end stuff, but he can play a hybrid tight end wide receiver role. You can have both of those guys out on the field. I have him going number 9 to the Chicago Bears. And rounding out that top 10, my final pick, the Jets. They have rebuilt most of their offensive line, but they need depth. I'm taking Oluwaya Fashanu out of Penn State, the big tackle. He's going to be very physical in the run game, and it never hurts to have more guys like that. They might have rebuilt most of that offensive line, but they still have some injuries. Elijah Vera Tucker is gone. I think this is the right pick for them. Some other interesting picks here. I know a lot of buzz has the Vikings drafting J.J. McCarthy. I just don't see it. Again, I am not a fan of J.J. McCarthy. I don't think he gets past the Broncos at 12. But the Vikings might take him there at 11, or they might trade up to get him. Again, I didn't do any trades when I made my mock. But J.J. McCarthy goes 12 to the Broncos, and I have the Vikings taking Liatu Latu at 11. The corners, the run on corners kind of starts in that 13 to 17 range. Teron Arnold goes first, Nate Wiggins after his explosive 40 time, and Kenyon Mitchell to the Jaguars. I don't think they can pass that up. The Rams are looking to replace Aaron Donald. I have him taking Jerzon Newton. He's going to be hopefully a monster inside. It's going to be almost impossible to replace that production from Aaron Donald, but they need to be able to try and do that. So getting a big guy like Johnny Newton there to eat up blocks in the middle, eat up space. It's going to be big. And the last thing that I want to highlight here on my mock draft, and I'll post this as well on Twitter at Jeremy Lapidus, so you can see my entire mock draft. But Jackson Powers Johnson, the center from Oregon, he goes 21 to the Dolphins. The Dolphins who just lost their starting center. He's gonna be really good. I've only ever heard good things about him. Watching his tape, he doesn't make a lot of mistakes. He is one of the elite prospects, top 10 on a couple people that have seen big boards. Don't be surprised if he competes if he's a top 5 center in the league next season. He has that kind of upside. So, anyway, that's my mock draft 2.0. If anybody has a player from a team that I did not mention that they would like me to go over real quick, I will be more than happy to do that. Just leave that in the comments. But heading into our fourth and final segment, we are going to go over some races, some playoff races in the NBA and a little bit in the NHL, as both of those seasons are wrapping up. So stick around for that, breaking down playoff races in the two leagues that are winding down. This has been Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. We'll be right back.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much for sticking with me through that break. If you are just tuning in, we just finished going over my mock draft 2.0, post-free agency mock draft. The draft is just about 2 or 3 weeks away now, around April 20th, I believe is when it's going to be, maybe the 24th. It's coming up right around the corner. It's going to be on us sooner than you think. In segment 1, we went over March Madness. The Final Four is set. We went over the path that every team has taken to get here, their ups, their downs, what we expect them to do in the Final Four, as well as breaking down the matchups and picking a champion. In segment 2, we went over Joel Embiid, the whole situation with him and the Sixers, his injury history. Should he be rushed back? How soon should he play? Should he be shut down? We went over all of that in our second segment. And in our fourth segment here that we're about to do, we're going to talk a little bit more about the NBA, a little bit about the NHL, talk about the playoff races that are coming down the wire. We have just about 7 games left for most NBA teams to play, 7 or 8. Same thing in the NHL, 7 or 8 games for most teams to play. So we are down the stretch. It is getting exciting. So we'll break all of that down in just a second. But before we do, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation. with a message. It'll pop up on the bottom of the screen. We'll have a little discussion about what you had to say. Once again, that link to leave a tip or donation is gsmcpodcast.net. We appreciate anything that you do give, and for you guys watching the show. Like I was saying, though, segment 4, we're going to go over the playoff races, and we're going to start in the NBA. We'll start in the East. There aren't many huge playoff races here in the East. It's mostly for seeding. The only team that is still alive that is not in the play-ins is Brooklyn. They are 5.5 games back of the Atlanta Hawks, the Trae Youngless Atlanta Hawks. So there's a chance they could catch them. I don't see it happening. They have 7 games left. The Hawks have 8 games left. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for the Nets to catch them. So the East is basically set, and now it's just up to seeding. When we're talking about the break between the playoffs and the play-ins, the Pacers have the 6th spot. They're half a game up on Miami, who has the 7th spot, and 2 games up on Philly, who has that 8th spot. Orlando is in that kind of bubble as well. Really, everyone from 2 to 8, they're only separated by 7.5 games. If you want to go 3 to 8, it's only 5 games. So 8 to 3 is really where we're seeing these positions, these battle positions happen. Right now, the Heat and the Sixers are the teams that are looking out, or are out looking in at the playoffs. Are still there in the play-ins, though. So that's what we're watching in the Eastern Conference. I do think that Miami is going to be able to sneak in the way that they've been playing in recently, and how they always seem to get hot at the right time. You know, Heat culture, Jimmy Butler, playoff Jimmy Butler is a different animal. The Magic hold a slight lead. They've been really good this season. I'm not sure how long they can keep this up for. I do think that in that play-in, we're probably going to see the Pacers and the Sixers as those top 2 play-in teams, especially if the Sixers don't have Joel Embiid come back. If they do, I could see them going all the way up to that 4 seed with where the Knicks are right now, and that would leave the Pacers and the Heat as those play-in seeds. Although, really anything can happen in that situation. There's a lot of movement seed-wise. Boston is locked into the 1. Milwaukee's 11 games back of them. So outside of that 1 seed, nothing is really locked in. There's so much movement that can go on, especially in that middle part of the conference. Boston is just heads and shoulders above everyone else in that league. It'd be shocking to me if they didn't make the playoffs. Not make the finals, or at least the conference finals. In the West, we have a little more intrigue, especially at the bottom, and we'll start there. We talked a little bit about Golden State and the Rockets and how they were separated by just a game. They're only separated by 2 games. Both of these teams have played 74 games, so they both have 8 games remaining. Golden State's schedule isn't the easiest. They play the Mavs, then they have a huge game against the Rockets. The Mavs, who have been hot, they have a Maverick sandwich, and in between the two, they play the Rockets, the team that's right on their tails, before they get a little bit of a breather against the Jazz. The Lakers are above them in the standings. They're fighting for position as well. The Trailblazers, the Pelicans, and the Jazz to end their season. So they've got, in their last 8 games, they've got like 5 really tough battles. The Rockets, of course, being the most important one. And Houston, who's been so hot recently, has a tough test against the Timberwolves. Then they play the Warriors, the Heat, the Mavericks, the Magic, Jazz, Trailblazers, Clippers. So both of these teams have really tough schedules down the stretch. And it helps when you're as hot as the Rockets are. I know they lost their last game, but still 2 games out against a Golden State team that's kind of going in the wrong direction. So very curious to see exactly how this plays out at the bottom. Everyone else is kind of locked into the playoffs. The Lakers are only a game and a half up on Golden State, but they are 3.5 up on Houston. So it's going to be a little tougher for them to get out. But outside of that battle, when we look at that play-in and play-off line, there is a bit of a divide. Dallas and Pelicans have a 2-game lead over Phoenix and Sacramento at that last play-in spot. Not something that is insurmountable, but something that there are kind of clear divisions in the West. You have your top 3 teams, OKC, Denver, and Minnesota. OKC and Denver, who have both clinched playoff spots. OKC has a half-game lead over Denver for that first seed in the West. Minnesota is 1 game back of OKC, half a game back of Denver. They have not clinched a playoff spot yet, although I expect them to do that within the next 2 games. That battle for the top is very interesting. OKC, a super young team. They have guys like Chet, Shea, all these guys out there who have really performed way ahead of expectations. Denver, reigning NBA champions, have the best basketball player in the world, and Nikola Jokic on their team. Jamal Murray, who is a microwave on the court, and Michael Porter Jr. as well. And Minnesota, who they lost Cat for a while. There's a chance he might be able to come back for the second round of the playoffs, I believe is what it was. They are still a very good team. They have one of the best defenses in the league. Rudy Gobert, the probable defensive player of the year award winner, anchors that defense. Anthony Edwards is an electric basketball player. That's going to be a fun battle for that 1 seed as we come down the stretch. But as far as predicting who's going to get it, I think Denver is just the best team in the West. I think no one can stop Jokic. I think they're going to be able to squeak that out. When you look at the record, the schedule coming up of those top 3 teams, the Thunder have the Sixers, Celtics, Pacers, Kings, Bucks, and Mavericks. So they only play 2 non-playoff teams. Denver has a little bit of an easier schedule. They get 3 non-playoff teams, including the 4 non-playoff teams. And Minnesota, I think, has the hardest schedule of them all. They, outside of the Wizards, all of those teams are in the playoffs that they face. So, the Raptors aren't there either. It's going to be a fun race down the stretch. I do think that Denver's going to pull it out. OKC will probably be second, but I'm more the bigger race, I think, or the one that I think might get flip-flopped is Houston and Golden State. I do think Houston is going to pull that one out there, really kick Golden State down a peg from the last little shred of the dynasty that they had. Anyway, let me know what you guys think of the NBA playoffs, where that's out right now. In just a little bit, we'll go over the NHL playoffs as well. That'll be some for tomorrow. But thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in to today's episode of Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jeremy Lapidus. We'll be back here, same time, same place, tomorrow. Once again, thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in and watching Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day.